Che Guevara was a famous revolutionary leader who fought for social justice across Latin America. He grew up in Argentina, where he journeyed extensively on a motorcycle and witnessed widespread poverty. Because he cared deeply about the working class, he joined the Cuban Revolution to overthrow the regime. While he believed in armed struggle, he also worked tirelessly to promote education and health care. Although many people view him as a controversial figure, his legacy still inspires millions worldwide. As a dedicated medical doctor, Che looked after sick and impoverished villagers during his early travels. When he saw systemic inequality, he decided that radical political change was necessary. Even though governments tried to suppress his movements, he pushed through numerous obstacles with remarkable courage. Because he valued solidarity among nations, he traveled to Africa to support other liberation struggles. Consequently, his revolutionary ideals live on in contemporary political discussions. Che Guevara played a pivotal role in the Cuban government after the revolution triumphed in 1959. Although he held a prominent official position, he eventually gave up his power to pursue international revolution. Because he wanted to spread socialist ideals, he set off on secret missions to various conflict zones. While his radical tactics faced fierce opposition from capitalist nations, his unwavering commitment stood out. Therefore, historians study his writings to understand 20th century geopolitics. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Che acted as a key negotiator and dealt with high-stakes international tensions. Even though he disagreed with certain Soviet policies, he spoke out against imperialism whenever he got the chance. Because he refused to compromise on his core principles, he cut off ties with diplomats who endorsed bureaucratic corruption. While some critics argue that his methods were too extreme, his supporters point out his selfless dedication. Thus, his unique life story fascinates people globally. In Bolivia, Che tried to ignite a popular uprising, but he ran into severe logistical problems. Although local peasants hesitated to join his guerrilla unit, he pressed on despite the overwhelming odds. Because the military tracked down his camp, his small band ended up trapped in a remote jungle valley. While he fought bravely until his final moments, hostile forces captured and executed him in 1967. Nevertheless, his revolutionary spirit remains a powerful symbol of resistance. Following his tragic death, supporters turned into passionate activists who carried on his vision for a fairer world. Although governments banned his image in certain regions, his iconic portrait showed up everywhere from protest to university dorms. Because younger generations identified with his rebellious attitude, they took up his slogans during social movements. While time passes, his enduring appeal dies down only when political apathy takes over. Consequently, cultural analysts look back at his impact with great interest. Che Guevara believed that true revolutionaries must be guided by great feelings of love. Whenever he wrote letters to his children, he emphasized that people ought to care about global injustices. Because he walked away from a comfortable lifestyle, he proved that his convictions were completely genuine. Even though authorities tried to erase his memory, his supporters keep alive his famous quotes. Therefore, his philosophy continues to influence modern activist networks. Throughout his adventurous life, Che dealt with constant asthma attacks, yet he pushed ahead with his grueling expeditions. When he arrived in foreign countries, he mixed with local populations to understand their daily struggles. Because he looked down on material wealth, he gave away his own possessions to those in greater need. While his health deteriorated under harsh conditions, his mental resilience held up remarkably well. Thus, his physical endurance matches his legendary status. In his famous speeches, Che pointed out that capitalism exploited the global South for economic gain. Whenever he spoke, he called for structural reforms and international cooperation among developing nations. Because he believed that education transformed society, he carried out massive literacy campaigns in Cuba. Even though his economic policies met with mixed results, his visionary zeal stood the test of time. Consequently, economists look into his agrarian reforms. Ultimately, Che Guevara remains one of the most recognizable icons of the 20th century. While artists turn his face into commercial merchandise, activists draw inspiration from his uncompromising ideology. Because his life embodied the romantic ideal of the rebel, he stands out in historical archives. Even though debates go on regarding his legacy, his impact lives on in classrooms and streets. Therefore, anyone who studies modern history comes across his name frequently.